Delighted to say that David Miliband, the Chief Executive of the International Rescue Committee, is with us now. David, a pleasure to have you with us.
Nice to be with you, Wilf.
Let's start with that in terms of how much aid is getting in from your teams on the ground. You're very informed on this. Is it improving at all in recent days and weeks, or
Well, it's
not?
better than when the war was raging, but it's nowhere near as good as it needs to be, and it's not even the flow from before October the 7th, 2023. So our own teams, they're able to feed their own families, they're supporting some clients, but we're at half the level of aid flows that existed before the war, and the commercial traffic is massively restricted as well. So it's a very, very challenging situation. People are holding on to one thing, that's the hope that there's a future for them. This vote in the UN Security Council yesterday is important. It means there's international backing. No one vetoed it. There's international backing for this stabilisation force. And there's some discussion going on about what kind of government could be there. You've got 2 million people crowded in. Thank God the hostages have been let out, but those 2 million people have lost their homes, they've lost their relatives, tens of thousands killed. So it's an acute emergency. It's not the largest humanitarian emergency in the world, that's in Sudan, but it's an acute emergency of dire need.
The UN vote, how positive a step was that? And as recently as weeks or months ago, was it possible this vote wouldn't have been as, I guess not resounding is not the right word, but it was a firm vote?
Well, put it this way. Imagine if it had been reversed. If there'd been a veto, if it had been blocked, we'd have said that was really extinguishing a small light that existed that offers some hope. The UN Security Council resolution is all 20 points of the so-called Trump plan, which is about a ceasefire, it is about governance, but it also holds out the prospect that there needs to be new energy in this drive for this so often repeated phrase, but increasingly meaningless phrase, the two-state solution that people have talked about for 60 or 70 years.
So when you say it's meaningless, you don't think it's going to result that way?
Well, increasingly meaningless. It's become rhetoric rather than reality. Mm-hmm. When I first got into politics in the 90s, you had the Oslo process. There was a genuine sense of momentum about the idea that there could be a Palestinian state living alongside Israel. The facts on the ground have changed so much in the last 30 years. Many people are now saying it'll never be achieved. A lot of people saying this is the last chance. So the fact that this UN Security Council resolution got widespread support, the Arab states supported it, America supported it, Europeans supported it, China and Russia didn't veto it, even though it was a Trump plan. That's important because the reversal would have been really very, very serious.
I wanted to touch as well on the announcements yesterday by the Home Secretary as it relates to those seeking refuge. I mean, two articles in particular in the ECHR are getting her attention. Article 8 on family life I'll come to, but Article 3 I was really interested in your take on. This relates to whether people can be deported back to their home country if they might face torture, inhumane or degrading treatment. The Home Secretary said that the definition of inhumane and degrading has expanded beyond what is reasonable. That central point, is that fair for her to say that?
So just to understand, the Refugee Convention, which is the 1951 International Convention, says that no one should ever be sent back to somewhere where they have a quote-unquote well-founded fear of persecution. That has to be interpreted, essentially I would say colloquially it means if it's not safe for you to go back. Now, the definition of torture then gets assessed in a series of court cases. I haven't seen what she's said today about the detail, the paper that she put out last night about the details of this. What counts to me is the following. It should be sacrosanct that you don't get sent back to danger, and the two countries that have the most people coming across the channel are Sudan and Afghanistan. There is well-founded fear of torture if you get sent back to those countries, so that's important. Secondly, it's very important to me that people who pass the test of being a refugee are integrated in society, make a contribution to Britain. Those who don't qualify shouldn't be allowed to stay. It's absolutely critical that that's run effectively. And we do some work on that, actually, in countries including the UK. Thirdly, and absolutely critically, I think, for this, let's not forget the people who come here as refugees and qualify then make a positive contribution to the society. So there's a positive element to this. Now, the government has to make sure that this is a well-ordered system. I run a humanitarian agency. That doesn't mean I say everyone should come in. No, you've got to have an orderly, well-run system. And I think the numbers on this use of this European Court on Human Rights, which is not an EU court, it's a larger group of European countries. The figure I saw yesterday is that of the 100,000 people who came across last year, 1,000 this ECHR point related to us. So I think that's relevant. In the end, it'll be for the courts to do it.
I guess then, given, as you said, you're not necessarily articulating that everyone should be allowed to come here, when you take all of this approach together by the new Home Secretary, are you largely understanding and supportive of her? I guess central to, we could say that the qualification for permanent settlement is now 20 years versus 5. Does that feel unfair to you? Because I think central to this is, would your message to Labour MPs be, you're right, this is going too far, or guys, if you don't support this, be careful what comes next. It's going to be a much more hammer to a kind of screen approach to things.
Well, my message, our message as an organisation, is that we've got to look beyond the headlines in the way that you're doing. So I'm not having a knock on you. Even this 20 years thing, the Home Secretary said yesterday, we're going to look at what it actually means. Because obviously, if you're making a contribution to Britain, you're in business, you're a doctor, you're in sport, you're a contributor to the country. So there's a lot of things that still need to be worked on. What we know from our own work in the US, I run an organisation that was founded by Albert Einstein, who was a refugee in America. In America, you can become a citizen after 5 years as a refugee. Now, President Trump has stopped refugees coming in, but all those who've come in over the last 5 years, it takes them 5 years to become a citizen. And the critical thing is that their integration, getting people into work, getting them to learn the English language, that's a well-established system that involves government and the charitable sector. And we need similar drive in the UK, because I think that while not everyone can come here, we're 5th in the European League for people who are coming to claim asylum in this country. We're not top of the league. We've got to make sure that the system works well. And I just want to add one more point. One of the things that hasn't had any coverage and is going to be critical is how quickly these decisions are made. Because if someone arrives, you don't want them waiting a year or 2 years, because that's how you end up with the backlog and the problems that have been associated with it.
I wanted to ask a final question about the Labour Party and the government. A new poll today saying 45% of Labour supporters want to see the Prime Minister change before the next election. For a government with this big a majority this early in its term, is that quite a damning indictment?
I think this is a very challenging time to be in government. And it needs governments to focus on their core business. What's their cause? What are their big policies? How are they going to have the unity and drive to see it through? And I think that's what counts above all else. In the end, the poll that counts is obviously a general election poll. The public have elected a government. The government needs to get on with its business. Being a good government is the absolutely critical message.
And watching from afar as you do in America, what is this government's cause?
I think the government's cause is to make for a Britain that has more opportunity and more security for more people. The historic point of the Labour Party is it stands for majority aspiration. That's the absolute driving force that brought me into politics. I'm sure it's what brought the current generation of leaders into politics. And it's vital that they stick to that. They mobilise it. They make it for the modern world. So everything from the tech revolution and how that creates insecurity, but also creates opportunity, to what you were talking about special educational needs, to welfare reform. That is an animating cause, because I know that this is a country of enormous potential and we want to see it fulfilled.
I mean, you're talking about what the party stands for and you're capturing it very well. Could a different individual make that case to the public better than the current?
No, I think the Prime Minister has enormous integrity, enormous seriousness of purpose. He's a methodical person and he should get on with his job. The MPs should get on with their job. The public have a total right to express their opinions, whether in polls or in anywhere else. That's the point of a democracy. And one of the reasons I'm here this week, I gave a lecture on Sunday. There are more autocracies in the world than there are democracies. For us, I'm older than I'd like to be, but in the 90s, there was a wave of democratization around the world after the end of the Cold War. In the 2000s, that sustained. In the last 20 years, we're now in a situation where there are 91 dictatorships and 89 democracies in the world. We have to make our democracy work. It's vibrant, that's good, but we've got to make sure that the government focuses on its core business.
You're saying the Prime Minister has to get back to his job. I know you do have to get back to New York for your very important job at the International Rescue Committee. Does your job stay in New York now? You never want to return to frontline politics?
You know that I always give the same answer, and then it always gets... Yeah, I do. I always give the same answer, which is I'll always decide my professional options according to where I can make most difference, according to my own values, consistent with serving my family, which is obviously very, very important to me. And then people say, oh, never say never. We're all getting younger, aren't we? So we can all think about the future. No, I give the same answer. And I admire those people who are in politics today. It's tough in politics, but it's always been tough in politics. But I admire their commitment to public service, and I'm making my own contribution through the charitable sector. That's consistent with my values too.